Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's Paint With Me Live. My name is Brittany Lewis. I'm a professional illustrator and graphic designer, and Sundays is usually the day that we work on my dream project, the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. But this Sunday we actually have something different to work on because I have a much more pressing deadline, and I would like to share with you guys the process of sort of getting that going. But before we get into today's live stream, please be sure to like the stream if you like these kinds of stream. Be sure to hit the like button. Those likes help me out a lot. They let me know that you guys enjoy the streams, that you enjoy live creation videos, and it also helps push the video out to more viewers because I do have a goal of reaching 1,000 subscribers. So if you have not yet subscribed, that is another way that you can support this channel by hitting the subscribe button. Also, in the description there are going to be some links if you are curious about my art, if you would like to own a piece for yourself or hire me for your project. There are going to be some links for all of that down in the description. So before we get into this special circumstance project, I want to share with you guys some of the progress that we've made on the Cosmic Gateways Tarot, because again, Sundays is usually the day that I work on it, and we've made quite a bit of progress and are continuing to make quite a bit of progress on this project, and I'm really happy and excited with the way that things are unfolding. And so I'm going to share with you guys what we have going on, and then we'll get into this special project. So the first thing that I would like to share with you guys is the Five of Cups. Now, in the past couple of Sundays, we were actually working on the Five of Cups, and this was a project or a card that we were completing and working on the background and working our way forward. I have it now complete, so this is card number 43 of the Cosmic Gateways Tarot completed, and card number 44 is actually almost done as well, so I'm really excited about that. So I'll show you some more of the progress in it, but I'm really happy with the way that this card turned out. The story behind this card and the character and the circumstance is that this card is a card of grief and of loss and of all of the things that sort of come with losing something or someone, or having a circumstance that just does not work out in your favor and being sort of stuck in it, right? So being sort of consumed by the loss of something, by the grief of something. That is what this card represents. So I have our main character who is on the floor in the middle of the mess, and she has spilled 3 cups, and she is sort of consumed by the loss of the wine or the liquid in these cups. Now, if she were to stand up and change her perspective, she would see that she has access to so many more opportunities, so many more things, so much more wealth behind the bar. But she kind of has to stand up and she has to go and walk back there and get it, right? So this is a card of wealth. Super excited about this. Anytime I finish a card, I usually take it a card illustration, I should say. I take it into post-production where I do any color correction where I feel like it needs to be done. We get it ready for print, and then it's in a folder, and then I check off on my spreadsheet that I finished it. So checking this card off was so much fun. Really happy to do that. Hey TSV Nami Arts 12, I'm so glad to see you. Thank you so much for joining. So this is the Five of Cups from the project, the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. Now we also have the Five of Wands, which was the card that I had every intention of working on today, because I only have one more character to finish with this, finish on this card, and of course some small tweaks, making sure that their wands or their cloths look intertwined. But because I have something else that I need to actually get done, we're going to work on that instead, and I'm really excited to share with you guys what that is. So over the last couple of live streams, I've talked a little bit about being invited to a commemoration for the Fort Massacre at Fort Pillow, which is near Memphis, where I am currently. And as a part of that, they have all kinds of festivities. I think it's going to be happening from April 10th through the 12th. They're going to have workshops and genealogy workshops, things like that. Teaching people how to research. They're going to do a reenactment, shooting off cannons, all kinds of stuff, right? So when I found out about this particular event, I was super excited to go just to observe, right? Just to observe, just to do some photography, just to sort of network and meet people, because the person who had invited me to this particular event was someone who I've done quite a few paintings as it pertains to the United States colored troops of the Civil War. And so he was going to, told me about the event, told the coordinator about me, and I was just like, okay, cool, I'll just come down, take some pictures and that kind of thing, meet some people, maybe get a commission or two and then go from there. Now, I later found out, he sent me more information, that they are going to be having an art exhibition on the 12th. I was like, okay. I read the description, and my initial thought was that I don't know that my art fits the things that I typically create outside of the commission space fits this particular celebration. And then this past Wednesday, right after I finished streaming, got a phone call from the coordinator, Dr. Hurd, who is putting together this event and putting together the exhibition. And I had an opportunity to speak to her about it. She explained to me the theme. She explained to me some of the work that she does in genealogy and in research. And she invited me to partake in this exhibition. Now, after talking to her, or just sort of leading up to talking to her, a lot of things were starting to click into place. Like, I had a opportunity to do an event next Saturday, which is the 4th, to do an art talk or table or whatever the case is. I knew that I didn't want to do that particular event on the 4th when I found out about it. So when I registered for it, I made sure to, she had, the person who ran that event had an option to click whether or not you would do the 4th or you would be interested in later dates. I chose later dates. Later heard back from that particular coordinator, and she was like, well, we're not able to have you on the 4th. And I was like, I ain't signed up for the 4th, but I was like, okay, that's cool. She invited me to table. Now, generally, I will set up at different events around the city. I've done, all kinds. I've done vegan fests. I've done lectures where they'll bring in guest lecturers to the city, and I'll usually be like the only artist there. I've done art shows. I've done festivals. I've done all kinds of in-person events just within the city. I have traveled as well, but especially here in the city. And so it doesn't take much for me to set up. I already have inventory and things like that in stock. But something was sort of nagging at me not to do this particular one. I'd already made up my mind that I didn't want to do it. You know what I mean? I wanted to do it, but not this particular date. I had already made up my mind. And so when I got the email and I read it, of course, my first thought was I didn't sign up for the 4th, but I was like, it might be a good opportunity to meet other artists in the city. The lineup looked fantastic. It looked like something that I would enjoy and be interested in, and all of those wonderful things. I just for whatever reason just didn't want to do it. So I slept on it. I wanted to make sure I was making like a conscious decision and a wise decision, and the decision best for me. The one thing that I didn't want to do was have to rush and sort of force myself into it. So long story short, I emailed the coordinator back for that event. That was April 4th, Wednesday morning, right? Emailed her back. I'm so sorry, I won't be able to make it, but if I won't be able to table, but if time permits, I'll, come check out the event, this, that, and the third. And then I just let it go. In my mind, I was sort of battling with the fact that I had been looking for opportunities. So sometimes saying no to things as it sort of falls in your lap can feel like, I don't know if I'm, like I did ask, you know what I mean? I asked the ancestors, the universe, and everybody, for opportunities. I was presented with one, but it wasn't necessarily one that I was wanting to do at the time. There was some conflict, right? But I also, had a second opportunity to kind of force myself through it because, again, being grateful and all that, thank you for the opportunity, just wasn't what I wanted to do. So I felt like if I had continued with that one, I would have just been forcing myself to do it. I think anytime I do that, it ends up not being a good time. So, I was kind of proud of myself for just saying no, walking away, making the space for coming back for a later date, which I was much more comfortable with. And giving myself the opportunity to go check out the event to make sure that I'm a good fit for it, right? And then, going on about my business. So I'd done that earlier that day. I streamed, and then I got the phone call from Dr. Hurd. Now, with the event with Dr. Hurd commemorating the United States Colored Troops at Fort Pillow, that is also a very short turnaround event. However, after speaking to her, it seemed a lot more in alignment with the subject matter of that I already create. So, long story short, I've agreed to be a part of this exhibition, and so I have tasked myself to create a 24 by 36 painting. And I've been talking about showing you guys the painting process for the absolute longest, and it was going to be on a completely different subject. However, we got this one, so here we are. So I am also vlogging this, so after the event I'll put together a vlog so you guys can kind of see what all I do to prepare for a painting. And I'm not talking digital, I'm talking about like actual acrylic painting. and go from there. Now, as a part of this process, there were a couple of steps that I needed to take. One of those was to decide what it was I was going to paint. And luckily, just like I would do with my clients, hey, TN lady, just like I would do with my clients, I had being able to talk to Dr. Hurd kind of gave me the inspiration for what to do. It didn't seem so far out of alignment from the things that I create because of her emphasis on ancestry, right? So I decided what I was going to do, right? It was very close to the 3 of Cups. So for you guys who are new or just joining me, last year, I want to say about a year ago, I finished a card for the Cosmic Gateways Tarot, which was the 3 of Cups, which deals with a rite of passage where a young woman is celebrated by her elders. So her mother, her older sister, and her grandmother, and they're sort of bringing her into the fold as a young woman as she's sort of transitioning through life. And my son was like, why don't you just submit that? I was like, I could, but that will require me to actually have it, because it's a digital painting, have it printed and have to pay for all of that. So I figured it would be much easier for me to create something new, and also to do it that in a way that ties into this particular event. So here we are. Right. So as a part of most acrylic paintings, I would say I actually do start digitally. I used to not. For some, I don't, right? For some, I don't. For some, I start drawing like on a sketchbook. I will draw on paper, wherever, or directly on the canvas. But in this case, because I am not using direct references, so I'm not drawing people like that have been photographed for me, I am actually drawing this for the most part from imagination. It is easier for me to tweak anatomy. It is easier for me to sort of make decisions digitally than it would be for me to do it on paper. Pencil, it would just take too long to erase and redraw and all of that. Whereas digitally, I can just lasso select, move things around. I can also use the 3D models, which I'll show you guys here in a little bit, of how I use those in this particular setting. And then I can use this and transfer that to my canvas. So that's a whole other process in and of itself. So the concept of this painting, again, is tied to the 3 of Cups, which in this project for the Cosmic Gateways Tarot deals with the coming of age, deals with passing on the wisdom of those who come before us. And this painting is exactly that as well, right? So the idea was because this, of course, is an event commemorating the Civil War soldiers, the United States colored troops of the Civil War, and their massacre at Fort Pillow. And it deals a lot with the theme of it had to do with faith and how that ties to the ancestries moving forward from the past to the present and into the future. So my idea is tied to the 3 of Cups, but it's also tied to a painting by an artist by the name of Thomas Blackshear, who did a painting called Common Threads. It's a similar setup. So in this concept, I have a modern young man and I have my son pose for it. And one of the files that I have open is actually his, so I'll try not to click on that because for privacy's sake. But my son was gracious enough, my son and my husband both were gracious enough to pose for me, just so that I can get an idea of the positioning. And then from there, I could use other references in order to create the characters and then move forward with the painting. So again, I had to have this done in less than 2 weeks. So in my mind, it was my time was better spent today on our live stream working on it, and then we'll come back to the Cosmic Gateways Tarot Wednesday if I'm not streaming this as well, just to sort of get it done. So just in a nutshell, again, my son posed for the young man. I also have some pictures of him that I took that I intended to paint anyway that I'm using as reference. However, I will not be painting him directly. Again, I'm going to be making up faces just as they form, on the figures. I spent the last couple of days working on the posing, and so what I am doing now is just tightening up the blue line sketches. I am adding any detail I see that I might need so that this serves as my reference, and I'll show you guys some of the photographs that I have that I'll be using moving forward as we sort of progress through this. So my goal is to actually have this drawing done no later than tomorrow. I'm also challenging myself to stretch canvas, which is a whole other thing. The reason being, again, I didn't really want to have to spend money, and I also just have buku art supplies in my home that I need to use, and it just makes it much more personal for me to stretch canvas for it. So this gentleman in our reference panel, for those of you who are watching it horizontal, so I know that I'm streaming both horizontal and vertical this week. So if you guys are joining me vertically, I implore you to watch horizontally, because you guys will be able to see much more of the canvas as well as much more of the references and things like that. So his first painting was a painting that I did in 2017 of Mr. Phillips, who is the guy who recommended me to this particular event. And so shout out to him. I don't know if he watches these streams, but I graciously appreciate it. I surely do. So this is a painting that I'm using for my reference for the character that we're working on. And these are some of the references that he sent me just sort of over the years as he's commissioned me for these paintings. And there's been 3 in total, and I'll show you guys 2 more of those so that you guys can see sort of where we're headed, right? So this is a painting that I did in 2018 I'm using as reference, and I'm also using this painting from the same year, 2018, that I will be using as reference as well. So I'm using these particular references for their jackets, for any accessories they may have, so that I can make my character, although it is from imagination, as close to historically accurate as possible. The other character to the left of our young man is represents a domestic worker. This was a job that my grandmother had. I know lots of people whose grandmothers and mothers were domestic workers in the 60s. And then the final character in the back is represents Queen Mother. I feel like we all come from women, so I wanted to make sure that his tie to his ancestry goes back to a Queen Mother. So I have references for that as well. So I just finished earlier today, maybe about 30 minutes before we started streaming, the domestic worker that I began to work on, our Civil War soldier. So I'm just gonna pick back up with our soldier, and we'll kind of see what we can get done while we stream, and then we'll wrap it up, and I'll continue to work on this. And again, I'll keep filming a vlog for this so that you guys can see more of the process. Some of the event I really want to gather footage for it when it occurs. And so yeah, we've been rocking this week. So normally I ask you guys how you guys have been doing, so I hope that you guys have had a very good week. For me, it has been crazy productive. I've had so much synchronicity, so many things align just in the oddest ways, and I'm very happy for it because child, it's been a long last 3 years. So I'm very, very grateful to be in a space where I can kind of create a little more freely, meet more people, sort of enjoy myself a little bit more. I always enjoy myself creating, but just enjoy myself a little bit more as we create. So we're working on the layer called Soldier. So I'm just going to continue to add in his clothing, and then it's a see fit. I can tighten it up a little bit later, but I'm using my blue, draw sketchbook. I'm using the blue sketch as sort of my blueprint, and then I'm changing it as I go. So for instance, the blue sketch of our grandmotherly figure was posed in a certain way, but because once I started to drawing her posture seemed kind of weird, so I fixed her posture and in my black and white drawing of her, and then move forward. So the blue sketch again acts as sort of a blueprint, but it's not sort of law. We're tightening it up as we go, and it'll change even more once we sort of finalize this drawing for canvas. But I'm super excited again to get this done. One of the things that I'm really sort of trying not to overthink is the fact that I know that the coordinator for this particular exhibition saw the paintings that I had done of Mr. Phillips and the other 2 soldiers, right? Those I used photo references, and so I was able to get them to look exactly like the photo references. So for instance, this is the picture of the first painting that I did, and then I'll show you guys the painting itself. So I was able to get it to look exactly like him. Now, because I'm not necessarily using photo references exactly, my challenge and the thing that I kind of have to give myself grace for, especially considering I'm on a super tight deadline with this, is that it may not look as photorealistic as some of the other paintings and work that I've done. However, I think it's okay. I think in this light, it's okay. We're gonna work it through. I just really want to get it done. So again, I'm going to be going back and forth between my references because I am looking at their clothing. I'm sort of looking to see where there are stitch lines and things like that. Now the plan for the bottom of this painting, because these are representing the young man in the foreground's ancestors, I plan to have the bottom of this sort of bleed up so that they read sort of as apparitions, if you will, but I want them to feel like they're there but not quite physically there. So the little boy is going to reach the bottom of the canvas. He's going to be holding a light, and that light is going to be the light source for the other characters, so they'll glow a little bit, just like our Three of Cups. Right? So just like our Three of Cups. But I want to make sure that I don't add too much detail to the bottom, because again, the goal once I get to painting this is to sort of brush the paint upwards so that they appear to be sort of a part of the atmosphere, not so much physically present, if that makes sense. Sometimes when I am doing like concepts and things like that, I used to get in trouble when I was I used to go to the University of Tennessee many years ago, and I was in the graphic design program there before I transferred to the University of Memphis. And one of the things that I would run into was that I would create highly conceptual work, really conceptual work. And I remember asking once if it was possible to be too ambiguous, and they were like, yes. Right? So but I think that giving a backstory to the work that we create kind of adds to that. It adds to the story that you're trying to tell, because all of this is just a visual language, whether this is a digital painting, whether this is a acrylic painting, which this will eventually be, whatever it is, whether it's a drawing or a sketch or anything like that, all we're doing is telling stories, right? We're telling some kind of story, whether we're doing that intentionally or unintentionally. Over the last few years, I have sort of made an effort to be intentional in the storytelling that I do, and it's fun, right? So I can explain to you guys, while we're looking at the Five of Cups, for instance, that this person is grieving an accident or grieving a situation. That helps to sort of drive the decisions that I make as I am creating these stories. So same difference here. Same difference. We are creating a story. This young man is connecting to his family, and he's also healing his family. So they're providing him with the wisdom of their experiences, so he's able to move forward through life with the wisdom of their experiences. But as he corrects certain cycles, right, as our young man makes different decisions, corrects certain cycles, he then heals his bloodline, right? So he heals these ancestors that he is still connected to. So that is the story behind this painting. And as I'm saying this, I'm glad I am, because I actually, once we get this done, I'll have to like do a short talk about it, right? So that's going to be a whole lot of fun. Now, again, I mentioned another painting by the name of Common Thread, which is created by an artist named Thomas Blackshear. Beautiful painting. That one takes a similar, I don't know, similar energy, I would say, except in his, there are 4 people of different ethnicities, and they're sort of joined by a common thread. So it does talk a lot about connection. His painting does speak to a lot of connection. It's also very graphic. It's just a beautiful painting. And so my challenge was, or the thought that I had, because knowing that this is inspired by that as well as the Three of Cups, is wondering how I would like to articulate the details. Do I want to make it flat and graphic like the painting Common Thread? Do I want to sort of make it very loose? Not really sure. Again, we on a real tight deadline, so I'm not going to overthink it. I'm not going to overthink it too much. There are just certain things that I know for sure that I'm going to include, such as the bottom of the canvas bleeding up into our characters, as well as the Queen Mother characters not touching the little boy, but having her bleed down into the child. So we're gonna get there. I'm really excited to see how this turns out. I am a little nervous, I ain't gonna lie. Sometimes I kind of get into my mind, and we have these excitements, and it's like some part of us is like, oh, but you will fail, you know what I mean? Start talking crazy to yourself. And so I have to sort of mitigate that conversation and just kind of stay with the excitement, stay with the idea that this is a wonderful opportunity. Be real, amazed by how synchronous it was just to sort of have the opportunity to do this, and then just kind of go from there. So I'm trying very hard not to like self-sabotage and talk myself out of it, considering it is such a short deadline to have for a physical painting. for a digital one as well, but certainly for a physical one where I will be stretching canvas for it. But again, I just sort of have to give myself grace and be patient and just enjoy the process and try not to overthink. Right? So I'm really glad to have you guys on board. Whether you're watching this live or the replay, I really appreciate you all for being here, and I really, really hope that you guys have had a great week. It has certainly been a very adventurous week, to say the least. Let's see. I think I want my character to have a bit of a mustache. I don't know that we're not going to get exactly. We're not going to paint the same person that we see in this picture. Again, I'm just kind of using him because he's facing the right way. I also am using his uniform, but we want to give ourselves some room and freedom to be creative as we see fit. Now, I did also look up photographs of the United States colored troops, which was super helpful as well. That kind of allowed me to see more of what their phenotypes look like. Sometimes we can create faces that are supposed to fit a certain era, and they may not look as though they are part of that era. So that's something to consider as well. Again, I'm just making up faces. I don't have a whole lot of luxury and time to overthink it too much. I do know that I want them to appear happy that they're connecting with this young man, so that is part of the expressions that I want to sort of give them each. Something where they seem very satisfied with him, right? And they're happy to have him represent their sort of bloodline. Just another thing that I took into consideration as I was creating this is that maybe each person is the grandchild of the one before them, right? So I have the domestic worker because my grandmother, one of them, was a domestic worker. She was a maid for a very long time for a white family right here in the South, and no other people about my age whose grandmothers were also domestic workers. So that particular character is an homage to those women, right, who sacrifice so much of themselves to take care of other people's kids, right, and other people's households. And so we're sort of leaning into that. Now, in terms of the Civil War soldier, again, this kind of tracks back to the theme of the actual event itself. So for that, but also just thinking about how many of us have ancestors who were either, like, of course, directly affected by the Civil War or who participated in it. I'm not really sure about mine because I can only go back so far, for now. But I do know that I have my great grandfather, for example, one of them was a World War I veteran, right? His father was an enslaved man who was sold like 5 times, and so that is definitely a direct something that my family, I'm sure, has had some part of in some way, whether it is to witness it, right, to hear about it, to live during that time, and etc. I think that this is relevant in that regard. But again, I'm not really wanting to illustrate a particular person, more so an idea of a person, right? So I may flip the canvas because I noticed that I had an easier time drawing this angle of a face from the other side, and that helps me also to see and make sure that I am drawing the way that I want it looking, balanced the way that I would like for it to look. So I'm going to flip the canvas here. There we go. I do want him to also look down at his descendant, and I don't mind his face. He looked pretty good. We're going to make sure that I want to have like a broader nose, or probably lower the nostril a little bit. So we'll work on this, and then we'll move forward. So again, I hope y'all had a great week. I hope you guys are working on some creative projects. I would love to hear about it, and hope that you guys are studying and doing new things. I'll always tell y'all about Photography Club. Listen, the coordinator's name is Jessica Chady. She is so awesome, man. So yesterday she had, she's also a filmmaker. So the coordinator of the Photography Club is an artist in residence, or a innovator in residence for the Memphis Public Libraries. And so she has a residency there for a year, and she puts on programs, and there are a couple others. There's one who's doing it for graphic design. I think there's some others there are other classes and things like that. But anyhow, Jessica is a movie producer. And so yesterday, rather than talk about photography, we talked a lot about filmmaking, which was really interesting. And so to me, just sort of learning those new things, I don't know if I'll go into film. I will say, however, every time I go to a movie, I would like a movie credit. Every time I go to the movies, I always visualize my name in the credits somewhere. I don't know where it's going to be, right? Or how it's going to work out, but I always sort of visualize my name. That is something that I do religiously, right? So just to be able to meet someone who is a movie producer who is so passionate about it, and you can tell that she really, really loves what she does, has been inspiring as well. So just being around other creatives, having you guys here, right? Having you guys here, and I see so many of you are artists and have arts in your names and things like that. It's just really, really inspiring, and I'm grateful to have you here. Whether you're new, right? Whether you've been here with me for a minute, whether you are sort of have ever said hello, whether you say hey every time you see me, I'm really, really thankful and appreciative to have each and every one of you guys here. But I know that it is so wonderful to be in the midst of other creatives. It means a lot. It feels really good. It's super inspiring. Even if we're working on different things, even if we're at different skill levels, just to sort of be around you guys as you're being creative fuels me, right? It fuels me, and it is something that I look forward to every week. And I thank y'all for, I know again, Sundays is usually the day we're working on Cosmic Gateways Tarot, but I'm happy to have you here as we work through this particular painting. And I'm on the wrong brush. So what I'm doing now is I'm just sort of drawing in the details. I'm probably going to flip through, because they have on hats, but the side of the hats that I'm looking at is in shadow. So I'll probably sort of move through and see if I can find an angle of a hat within the references that I have that might be a little more clear, right? So I can kind of see what's going on. Again, I kind of want to get as close to historically accurate as possible. Also taking into consideration that, again, we under a short deadline. So don't want to reach for perfection, but we do want to make sure that we're taking some things into consideration and being mindful of it as we sort of work through this particular painting. So this is going to be a painting. Super excited about that. I'm really curious to see how it turns out and what decisions I make as I move forward, especially considering the deadline. So how detailed I go, right? Or how much liberty I take with sort of implying things as opposed to like drawing them literally. So that is something that I'm really, really curious to know how that's going to go down. Now, again, I'm going to be stretching canvas for this as well as for another painting. I just won't be doing that particular canvas today or whenever I stretch for this particular painting. But when I do, I'll show you guys the process of that. It's super easy, and I think that if you paint a lot, it can be extremely economical. The way I came about it was many years ago. I know a good maybe 15 years ago or so, maybe longer than that. I had purchased some canvas, raw canvas on eBay. Right? I know it sounds odd, but it was on eBay. Purchased some raw canvas on eBay, and hey, Draw Sketchbook, she says concept artists work in the film industry. Yes. That is so awesome. Yes, concept artists do. And I also asked about what did I ask Jessica about? Gosh, what are they called? I'm having brain fog, but you know the little like cars that they have that'll do like action shots and things like that. Asked her about that. She said that usually it depends on the movie, but they will hire people from that. Sometimes they'll be super detailed, sometimes not. But yeah, I see myself in the movie industry somewhere, in somebody's movie credit, getting a movie credit some kind of way. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, so this painting. So a long time ago, I had purchased a whole bunch of canvas, raw canvas from eBay. Now you can also purchase canvas drop cloths from like Lowe's and Home Depot. It works exactly the same way. But this particular order from eBay had mold at the bottom of it, and I remember writing the seller back and say, hey, I'm sorry, I got my canvas, but it has mold at the bottom. Would you like me to send it back? I don't know how you want to work, exchange it, or whatever the case is. They ended up sending me a whole other like flap of huge amount of canvas. And with the one with the mold, I was able to just kind of rip it off so it no longer had mold on it. And so I ended up with like 2 big bulks of canvas. So from time to time, I would actually stretch, because I got it, right? So I would stretch my canvas. Also, about 10 years ago, I did a huge art haul, and I purchased a bunch of stretcher strips because I had an idea of doing a triptych, which was like a series of 3 paintings. One was going to be myself, which I started, it just didn't finish it. One was going to be my husband, and then my son was going to be the third, and they were going to be like portraits of us. So I don't know if you guys have ever just been nosing and went down my Instagram, but somewhere in there's a portrait of me that I drew, where there's my face, and then there's a lotus above me, and then I was going to incorporate some sacred geometry in it as well. So each person in the triptych was going to have some symbol that reminded me of them. I just never finished it. Right? But I had the stretcher bars for it, so we're gonna use the stretcher bars for this project specifically, just to make use of it, and also because I got it, and there was really no need for me to go out and buy canvas. Is when I just I have the ability to stretch it and have it myself. So yeah, it's gonna be a little bit of a journey for the next couple of days, but I am very, very excited to do that. Really excited to be a part of it. This is going to be my first exhibition, and again, I'm only going to have 1, maybe 2 pieces, depending if the other Civil War paintings make it into the exhibition. So that'll kind of depend on Mr. Phillips, who owns the one of them, at least, who has one of them. So we'll see how that goes. But if not, I will have 1 piece in it. And I'm gonna tell you, in terms of like synchronicity, one of the other reasons I say yes to this is because I was legit, I'm talking about like just the weeks leading up to this, considering doing an exhibition or finding one to participate in. And so it just kind of fell out the sky, and it also happened right at a time when I decided not to sort of settle for something else just because it was presented to me. And I just sort of, sometimes, as a recovering people pleaser, right? Sometimes it is difficult for me to say no to certain things. It just kind of depends. Some stuff I've kind of gotten like, it's just a hard no. It's not even up for negotiation. But for some things, it is difficult to say, oh, well, you know what? I didn't sign up for that, and I know I didn't want to do it on that particular date. But gosh, I do feel bad for saying no when she invited me, and it sounds like she needs someone there, right? So that was the internal conversation that I was having around the April 4th event, and then it just kind of was like, you know what, no, don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. You already don't want to do it. It just sort of allows someone else to take that space, and then you can always go and check it out to see if it is a great fit for you. I think one of the turnoffs though was that I know that in a forum she had this is talking about the April 4th event. She had to say yes or no whether or not you would be interested in the 4th, and I know that I said no. Right? And so I just could not make myself move forward with that, even if I could see all of the ways that I could benefit from it and all of that. It just, to me, I was going to again force myself to it, and that never ends well. Right? It never ends well. Sometimes we could say no to something, and it could just be our own fears, right? Sometimes we can just feel unworthy of certain opportunities, and we can talk ourselves out of it. It's like it becomes self-sabotage, right? I went through that. Now, I found out about this thing Wednesday, the exhibition Wednesday, and so that was something that I certainly began to do just as a defense mechanism, because it is a new experience. But when you can kind of catch yourself in it and sort of stop yourself from it and just try anyway. Now, if I don't make it, at least I tried, right? But I don't want to count myself out, and I certainly don't want to sabotage myself when I have such a perfect opportunity that aligns with me in so many ways. Not to mention, as we were talking about ancestry, the person who I was speaking with, who was coordinating this exhibition's name is Dr. Hurd, right? I was talking to her about ancestry, and I was talking to her about her research in going back, I think she said like 600 to 700 years. And one of my favorite ancestors, right, is someone I've never met, but it's my mom's father. She always talks very highly of him. Of course, all of these people that lived before us, including ourselves, we're all sort of complex people, right? So no one's perfect. Everyone has sort of things that they've done and experienced that they probably could have gone better or whatever. But for whatever reason, it may just because my mama, I always talk super highly of him. But one of my favorite ancestors is my grandfather, whose name is I laid and heard. Right? So it's like, hey man, all right. I'll bite. Okay, so I will go ahead and see how it go, and go from there. The other plus of this opportunity is that if this once this painting is displayed, it'll actually be up for sale. And so the terms that the gallery, which will be holding this exhibition, have is that they will only take 10% of the sale, which is crazy good. Right? Whereas some galleries take like 50% and so on and so forth, because they're holding the space for it. So it just lined up in a way that was kind of hard to ignore. Right? Life is like that. Sometimes you get those synchronicities, and sometimes you'll have experiences and there's something in the back of your mind telling you no. Right? And you'll second guess it, and go through all that people pleasing and all that stuff, and knowing that you should say no, and we do it anyway, and then we end up suffering for it in the long run. So I'm really kind of happy with, just crazy how this came about. We're gonna see how it go out. We're gonna see how it go. So yeah. Now what I've just done is given my soldier a face. I'm all right with this so far. I may come back and tweak it to make it a little bit more, a little less illustrative, right? So that's something, again, because I'm not drawing somebody's face from like photo reference. Which if it were photo reference, I could probably I could get it to look exactly like the photo, but this is sort of going from imagination. So because of that, we want to make sure that it's not too illustrative, which is something that I tend to fall into. I want to make sure that I have details in place that would traditionally read as sort of real. It doesn't have to be photorealistic. I just don't want it to look like a cartoon, if that makes sense. So for instance, when I showed you guys the 5 of cups, like it looked very, very, the face of our character looked very illustrative, right? So that's just something that I want to balance out. And again, if it end up being like that, just is what it is. All right, so let's go back to our pencil. Now I am actually using, I don't recall if, I believe it is, I'm using a pencil called Real B2, and this comes from the artist Eric Anthony. I got a whole set of his pencils and brushes and things like that. It's giving me that like graphite look, which I'm really, really happy about. So that kind of helps me sort of be loose as I'm sketching. I don't have to be super detailed. I'll do another pass before this is over with to tighten it up, so that when I go to canvas, I'll have a really, really good blueprint. All right, so the next character we're going to work on is going to be the Queen Mother in the background. Now, before I start her, I want to go ahead and flip my canvas back to the way that I intend to paint it, so that we're getting an honest sort of look at what it is that we're going to be creating. All right, so we're going to do Queen Mother. I can cheat, actually. You know what? I might. I'm going to go and use a symmetry ruler, and I'm going to place it smack in the middle of her face, like so. And then I may very well use this just to sort of shape her body, right? Just to make sure that we're looking at her head on. Now, the trick with the symmetry ruler, especially if you're drawing faces and things like that, is after a point, turn it off, right? Because your face is somewhat symmetrical, but it's not perfectly symmetrical. So anytime I see someone who is using and relying very heavily on the symmetry ruler and the whole thing is done in symmetry, it has a certain look to it. There are going to be some inconsistencies in the shape of the face. There are going to be some inconsistency. Like if you're looking at me, I got a mole on one side and not one on the other, right? So one of my eyes might be shaped differently and so on and so forth. So you can use it as a guideline, but we don't want to use it completely as we move forward. We're just kind of going to use it to play some things, and then we're going to turn it off, and then we'll allow ourselves to sort of make those mistakes and those sort of inconsistencies in the face, and then go from there. All right, so I'll go pull up some of these references of Queen Mother that I found on Google. So again, I have each of my characters, and then I'm going to use my son. I don't know how long ago the picture was taken. I took one recently for this, and then the one that I'm going to be using to represent him, to represent this young man, is probably, I don't know, maybe a year old or so. but he was shorter. He still had like the baby fat in his face. And but what I liked about that picture is that clearly he's of today, right? So he had on like a t-shirt, he had on like a hoodie, so it had the t-shirt and like the long sleeves, and you could see the hood, and then the t-shirt had like a Game Boy on it. So and then his hair looks like somebody who lives today. So that I think will help me solidify the fact that the people surrounding the little boy are not of today, right? So they represent again his ancestors. All right, so some of these are going to be pretty blurry, some of these may be very clear. I'm looking at each one for different reasons. So the first thing that I'm noticing, or you guys may notice, is they all are wearing pretty much the same type of wrap, right? So that's important. That is something that I wanted to emphasize. You might also notice that they each have some kind of adornment in their hair. I don't know yet if I want to go with a head wrap or if I want to do something like like sculpted hair, but each of my references looks like they're wearing a head wrap with the exception of maybe one. But we'll start with the clothing for now. We'll start with the clothing in their body for now, her body, and then we'll go from there. So I'm going to make sure, I'm going to keep this ruler on a separate layer. I'm going to highlight the option in Clip Studio Paint that says show in all layers. I'm clicking on that, and then I'm going to create another layer, and then we'll work and name this Queen Mother. And then we'll start. Now again, we're going to start with this symmetry ruler, and eventually we're going to turn it off because we don't want it to have that like forced symmetrical look. We do want to give ourselves room to create inconsistencies that show up in real life, right? So let's see. How does this set up? I like her. She look good. There you go. Now I wanted her to have some size on her. That was important to me as I was creating and thinking about this particular character, because to me that gives a very motherly sort of vibe, right? You know, she look like she don't play around. You know, she look like she take care of everybody, and that she's nurturing and all of that. So we'll go into this with that in mind. Now again, with her hands as well as with the Civil War hands, I ain't gonna mess with that right now. Because hands can be kind of tricky. I have some references, but I'll save that for another time to get that done a little bit later. But we'll go ahead and lay in her wrap. Now, another thing that I was thinking about until I sort of thought a little bit further about it, I was thinking about creating sort of in vein of the Three of Cups. Each of the characters surrounding the little girl is wearing a primary color. So our primary colors are blue, yellow, and red. Some people say blue, yellow, magenta, whatever. Blue, yellow, and red. We're going to go with that, right? So the primary colors are blue, yellow, and red. Those can also represent water, earth, and fire, so on and so forth. So I was considering doing that, but once I got into looking at specifically the housekeeper, a lot of times they wore white or gray. So I'm just going to kind of keep it as historically accurate as possible. I also do not want to outshine the main character, who is the little boy. Now if I had more time, the thought that I had was to create the ancestral characters in black and white, and then wherever the light hits them, add color to it. I don't have but a few days to do this, so we just go paint it as best we can and then move forward. But if I were to spend a little bit more time on it and I might even end up overthinking it, but that's sort of what I would aim to do, is create them in black and white, and then add details on top of that. Oh, that's what I'm doing. What am I doing? Erase the arm. And then add color where the light shines through. That was something that I did consider doing. I think that would have been I think that would have been a good idea. One of these erasers doesn't erase. There you go. I was going to say one of these erasers ignores the symmetry ruler and doesn't really work the same way. That's what I'm looking for. All right. Alrighty, so yeah, we'll just move forward. We're going to put in her body lines and things like that. I'll put in sort of the shape of her face. And then we will sort of add her lines, figure out what we're going to do about her head, if we're going to do hair sculpture, or if we're going to do, what am I trying to say? A head wrap? I'm not really sure. I'm just going to add in the implication of a nose. Again, we're using the symmetry rule, so it looks like it's going to auto save. Hopefully it won't take too long. But yeah, I had to come up with this idea real fast. Matter of fact, the lady called, Dr. Hurd called Wednesday after, just like, as soon as I hit end stream, Dr. Hurd called at as soon as I did that, and I didn't answer because I didn't recognize the number, and then she left the voicemail and I called her right back, and as soon as I started talking to her, like, it was almost like immediately an idea came to mind, and then she began to tell me about the event, tell me about the significance of this particular massacre, the fact that they didn't have, so this battle took place at Fort Pillow, this Civil War battle at Fort Pillow. You had a large number of what they call United States colored troops. So you had a large number of black soldiers who were fighting for the Union. And so what ended up happening was they were massacred, but rather than give them a proper sort of burial, they dumped them into a mass grave. She said that they didn't even bury them or give them a military burial until, what did she say, 2016? Something like that. So for all of those years, over 100 years, they were sort of just in this mass grave, and so they got their military burial in 2026, and I think she said they got I guess a religious burial, something like that, some years later, 2019. And so this is something that they commemorate every year. They have an art exhibition every year. And again, Mr. Phillips, who was the guy in the one of the Civil War paintings that I showed you guys, he showed her the work, and then she thought I would be a good fit. Right? And I'm glad that she did, because again, it was easier for me to visualize what I would do talking to her and sort of hearing about her goals, some of the workshops and things like that as it pertained to this event, as opposed to reading the description. I didn't get the same sort of level of inspiration. As a matter of fact, when Mr. Phillips sent me the information for the exhibition, again, my initial thought was, I don't think the work that I create right fits it. My mind, when it went to faith, went to religion, and I was like, I don't do religion in my work, right? And as a matter of fact, what I do, probably is the antithesis of that. It is more aligned with free thinking and taking control of your own spirituality and having positive representations in spirituality for black people. But again, as she began to talk to me, I was like, okay, well, I do ancestral stuff, right? You know what I mean? That fits. I've already done these particular paintings, and so I can kind of visualize it a little bit better. So again, when I have clients, it works very much the same way. So for instance, I have a movie poster that I'll be sharing with you guys, the process of that as well, that I'm working on. And so one of the ways that in which the idea came to me was just sort of listening to the creator talk about the movie. All right, so talked about the synopsis. I sent them a list of like a questionnaire so they could give me the information about, you know, themes and motifs and things like that, just in case they were uncomfortable sharing me the synopsis, which happens, right? Sometimes when we're working with people and their intellectual property, it's kind of hard to part ways with, right? Sometimes we can feel very uncomfortable sharing like the what that is, out of fear that it'll be stolen, because that kind of thing has happened. So what I do is I create a list of questions, or I will have a conversation about it, and I'll get the information that I feel like I need in order to translate their vision into a final product. In this case, it'll be a movie poster. But it does help to know to know like what the thing is about, right? So I got an idea for that. But it is very collaborative in that way. So talking to that person and sort of hearing their story, hearing them express what it is that they're trying to convey in the project that they are creating, helps me come up with ideas, right? So it's not so much me throwing darts in the dark. I can kind of say, okay, well, I'm listening to how they speak about certain things, and I can say, oh, that person seems like they really were interested in the connection of the ancestors. For example, this one, right? That was really something that I heard them emphasize in the way that they spoke about that one thing, and so maybe I should add that into it. And so you're pretty much interpreting a conversation or interpreting bits and pieces of information into a completed thing, right? Whether that is a book cover, a movie poster, whatever it is, a logo, oftentimes a painting, an illustration, and so on and so forth. You're sort of interpreting the things that you learn from them and then creating something from that. But it is very much collaborative, and I prefer it that way, right? That way we don't waste time, because the other side of that is that sometimes you'll get clients who are want to give you creative freedom. right? Creative, it depends on your relationship with that client and how well you know that client and their project. But sometimes creative freedom can be a curse, because what'll happen is you'll say, okay, I got this vision in my mind, I'm going to do this thing, and you create it, and then you're having to like make changes, because although they've given you creative freedom, they still have something in their mind that they want to accomplish. I've only experienced the flip side of that maybe a handful of times, where I got creative freedom and they were like, I just want flowers and you do whatever, right? Or I just want this thing and you do whatever you want to do. Or I really like how you did this art work that you've done before. Here is what the reference photo is. You do whatever, right? So I have experienced that, but more often than not, anytime someone's like, yeah, you just do whatever, that's not all it's cracked up to be. So anytime I can collaborate with the people who are hiring me to do things, the better, right? So we can have conversations, and then they can tell me what it is that they like or don't like. And then they can let me know whether or not I interpreted that conversation, excuse me, correctly. And as a part of being an artist, sometimes we are often attached to our ideas, and we're attached to the thing that we create. And so in doing that, working with other people and being hired out to other people, the practice is not being so attached and expecting revisions, right? You want to make sure that you're structuring your projects and things like that in a way where you're not doing unlimited revisions. You don't ever want to do that, right? Having some kind of structure. So for me, generally there are 2 rounds of revisions included, and then beyond that, if there needs to be more changes made, if I'm not able to get it after like a couple of conversations, then we get into charging, because now you're taking up time, right? And it also, doing so helps to sort of motivate decision making, right? So expect revisions always, but it is so much easier to collaborate with someone on some artwork than it is to be like, no, you just do whatever you want. No, we ain't doing that. No. I'll do that on my own time, right? I'll do that with my own projects. I'll do that, wherever else I see fit. But if ever that happens, I do try to get my clients to say, okay, cool, I can do that. However, send me some things you like, right? That way I'm not just creating and, again, throwing darts in the dark. I can say, okay, well, I know that this person likes the things that they're sending me seems very minimalist. So I know not to create something that's like overpowering, right? Or I see that this person really likes dark colors in the things that they've sent me. So I'll make sure that I create something that's very dark and moody. And so we kind of go from there. So there are ways to navigate those those places. But speaking again to Dr. Hurd, as she was sort of explaining to me the exhibition, the history of the exhibition, the history of the event at Fort Pillow, it made it so much easier for me to come up with an idea, because now I can speak to her and I can ask questions and I can sort of get an idea of where this is going, where reading the description, I may not have felt the same way. Because again, when I read it was like faith, past, present, future. I was like, I don't do church art. You know what I mean? That's just kind of, that's where my mind went. I was like, I don't think that the work that I do ties into it. However, again, once I spoke to her, I was like, oh, I was real. I was real. I read that situation all wrong. So I am grateful to have the opportunity. So it's just a matter at this point making sure that I do not self-sabotage as I am doing this. I don't believe I will. I just, sometimes I can doubt myself. That's just a part of my human experience. Sometimes things can feel like too good to be true, or too aligned, and it's like I'm waiting on the other shoe to drop. Right? Or I'm sort of bracing myself for what I might have missed or what I may be missing. And so in this, I'm trying to just enjoy the process. So anytime that happens, anytime I feel like, man, especially after the 3 years I had, right? So I had to sort of recondition myself to just go along with the journey and just to sort of relax and enjoy things as they happen, and take the wins, right? Don't question the win, take the win. And if the win doesn't fit, or if it seems like a win and then it's not quite exactly what you want, it's okay to say no. So for the event that I said no to for next weekend, that was kind of what it was. It was like, okay, I didn't spend these 3 years struggling, but here's something. And even though I said I didn't want to do it this day, they're offering it to me. Maybe I should, start going through all of this. And when in the end, I knew that it just wasn't aligned, and so it was okay for me to say no. And then something that was way better, you know what I mean, came up. Something that fit exactly what it was that I had been trying to accomplish in terms of, or researching anyway, trying to accomplish in terms of like the exhibitions and things like that. Just kind of fell in, and I have been telling y'all I have been wanting to do some traditional medium, go back to doing some of that anyway, so it all just kind of worked itself out in a way that I'm super happy about. All right, so I ain't gonna hold y'all up too long. I'm gonna go ahead and take a pause here because I feel like I have been running off at the mouth, but I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I did want to show you again some of the process of working on a painting and how I prepare that digitally. So what will happen is once I've gotten the drawing done, right, I will create two versions of this. One will just be the drawing, so it'll be even tighter than this. The faces will be better, all of that. It'll be tighter than this. What I'll do is actually create a light map. So I will do a very loose black and white sort of illustration over top of this so that I can see where light and shadow hits. Now the main character in the foreground is going to be holding a candle, and so that is going to light not only himself a certain way, but it's going to light everyone around him a certain way. So I'll create that, and then what I'll do is I will create a grid on top of this. So I'm going to be painting at a 24 by 36. So I have made this canvas 4 times smaller than that. So this canvas is a 6 by 9. It's not a super high resolution. It's set at 150 only so that I could get in really tight without it looking pixelated and really like, you know, get it to looking the way that I want to look close up. After that, I will create a grid at about 1/4 of an inch on this particular digital canvas. That will translate into a whole inch. So I'll make a grid on my canvas that'll be 24 inches down. So it'll be 24 1-inch squares down or across, excuse me, and then 36 of those down. And then I will sort of match up what I've drawn here to that canvas so that I can transfer it and redraw it. That becomes my setup, and then I paint. Generally before I paint, especially if I'm drawing with graphite, I will trace it with a marker. So for those of you who want to kind of see what that looks like on this channel, recently I did the self-portrait with the acrylic markers. Also, I think the most recent painting, which goes back a few years, I believe was 2018, there's a video of Bruce Lee, and in that one I do the same technique where I draw on the canvas, and that one was actually just a 6 by 8, same size as the self-portrait. It was a 6 by 8 canvas board, and on it I drew Bruce Lee, and then I outlined it in a waterproof marker. I do that for a couple of reasons. One, for me, anytime that I wet graphite, it bleeds, right? And it becomes very difficult to see what it was that I drew. So having that marker outline kind of keeps the bleeding, but it also makes it very easy for me to see exactly what I drew so that I can kind of remember where placements are, and I don't have to like make that up as I go. So I do that. So that'll be the step onto the canvas after I get it stretched, right, and prepped and all of that ready to go. I will actually transfer this drawing once it's completed onto the canvas, and then I'll paint. And again, I'll record some of that so that as I put together the vlog, you guys can kind of see the process of that. So I'm not going to hold you guys too long. Thank you so much for joining me. TSV Nami Arts 12, thank you so much for joining me. TN Lady, Draw Sketchbook. I'm so happy to see each and every one of you guys. If you like this kind of live stream, whether you're watching this live or the replay, please do me a huge favor and hit the like button. That pushes these out to more people so that I can meet my goal of 1,000 subscribers. We're going to get there. We're at 807, so I'm really excited about that. So if you like these types of streams, join me. So next Wednesday, we'll be back on the Cosmic Avis Tarot. We'll probably be working on a new card depending on how I go Wednesday. So we're working currently on the 5 of Wands. This is the last of the first 2 5s that I've done, so we only have one more character to do with it. I may go back and revisit the cowboy because I'm not really sure how I like the way that his clothes look in comparison to the other characters. Also, I'm looking at the shoes of the foremost character in the red. I have to kind of tweak that so that it looks a part of the environment and not necessarily like a sticker. But overall, we only have one more character to complete. And then with the wraps that they're pulling, I want to make sure that they look interwoven. So I did some of that work last week. I want to say last Wednesday. after I finished the live stream. So we'll be back on this Wednesday. So if you like a little more chill live stream, you would like to see kind of how this picture progresses, join me then. I also will maybe, I don't know yet how I feel about the background. I kind of like that they're in this open space, right? Because it means that they can go in 5 different directions, but they're still kind of stuck together as they're fighting. So this tug of war, I chose tug of war for a couple of reasons. One, because the initial idea I had was just going to be a simplified knot. And then I don't know how in the heck, I guess it was just meant for me to do. I was talking about another tarot deck that I like. Now, I think it's called Tarot of the Divine by Yoshi Tani. And I was flipping through. It came with like a really nice art book. So I was flipping through the art book. And I don't know how the heck I landed. I believe it's her Ace of Wands. Landed on her Ace of Wands, and I'd be doggone if it was not a knot. I had no idea, or maybe just had saw it and not remembered it and was influenced by it and didn't remember how that happened. I don't know. But anyhow, she had a knot motif, and so there was really no way for me to get. I guess I could have. You do what you want to do, right? You exercise your own free will. But I feel like it would have just been more trouble than it was worth to keep the same motif for the 5 of Wands than it would be for me to just come up with another concept. So the meaning behind this card is generally there is a conflict that takes place in the original source material, but it is not one that is deadly. So it's 5 people fighting with staves. It kind of represents a debate. It represents a tug of war. It does represent a situation where there is no clear winner, and that's sort of what we're getting from this tug of war motif, from this tug of war illustration. There's no clear winner. They stuck together, right? The cloths are bound together. There's no clear way for them to break free from each other. So rather than work with each other, they're sort of working against each other, and it's not helping anyone at all. And so that's kind of what I wanted to illustrate in this illustration. So we have one full figure left to do, and then I'll go back and revisit the cowboy and maybe the background. I'm not sure. I do feel better about the clouds though, so I'm happy about that. So we'll be here Wednesday. So if you like a little more chill live stream, join me on Wednesday for Bring Your Own Project Live. This is the card that we'll be working on, and until then, I'm gonna work on this painting, child. Try to get this paint done and have it ready to go by the 10th. And no matter how it goes, I'll share with you guys the process or sort of the win or loss in it to sort of see how it goes. But I'm gonna put it out in the atmosphere that it works out, and I'm definitely going to take each moment as it comes and enjoy the process and enjoy the journey and try not to self-sabotage and get it done. So I thank you so much, you guys, for watching and joining me. I hope you guys have a happy, creative, and prosperous week. Peace.